welcome back to Leave Me Alone, I'm Busy Farming. As promised in my last video, I told you all I'd introduce you to Gino. So here he is, Gino. I think as of yesterday he was officially 6 months old. He's a little bit of a handful because he's a puppy. Loves to run through the garden, even though now that my plants are getting bigger, it's not quite as bad. So today's video, I just wanted to touch on the progress of my home market garden. It's right around 4 weeks since I shot the last video and I started the Florida weave. 4 weaves along now, so I did 3 since that video, and I'm overdue. So again, we'll do a quick update on how things are growing, any problems I'm experiencing. We'll also talk about where I'm at in my propagation of Brandywine heirloom tomatoes. Okay, those were all from suckers. Also propagated a basil plant. The basil plants in my greenhouse, they're getting a little stressed, so I figured I better rescue some cuttings and start to propagate them. Initially this was struggling, but it's doing well. I just trimmed this center growth off, and now I'm getting 2 nice shoots coming off. And we'll touch on my propagation of mulberries. These are a Thai dwarf variety. Again, we'll go through the struggles of this, but just to show I do have new growth. It might be hard to see from that distance. And if you stick around to the end of this video, I will talk about my experience with a raccoon that was wreaking havoc on my home market garden. And what I've done, I've purchased a solar powered animal repeller. So I'm going to talk about this. This is what I've tried, and we'll talk about the success. Is it working? Is it not? Just so you all have another option. Okay, so check out the video. Before I show you how my Brandywine heirloom tomatoes and marigolds and zinnias are growing, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about the propagating of basil. So I took a cutting of a basil plant and I dipped it in some root hormone, and I placed it, this is just potting soil, and I've been watering it every day. And I just trimmed this centerpiece, and within like 2 days it starts to branch out. So that's just a trimming technique that'll get this to go from a single stem to multiple. So success there. And the reason for that is the plants inside the greenhouse are not looking great. I wanted to grab a couple of cuttings and get some more plants going versus starting them from seed. I did trim my Thai dwarf mulberry, and this originally was a piece of the branch. Again, root hormone, potting soil. It had some leaves. I left just a few on. They wilted, died off, and it looked like almost it was going to be a dead stick. And I'm going to say within 2-3 weeks we start getting new growth. So again, we'll have more mulberries to look forward to. And these are actually going to go to my son Gerald. We're going to put them in his food forest. Let's talk about the Brandywine heirloom tomato plants from suckers. Now, if you've been watching this channel for some time, you know I love to propagate. And to ensure I'm getting some good growth and hearty fruit tomato production on my Brandywine heirloom plants, I've been breaking off the suckers. Again, dip them in root hormone. This is an actual seed starting mix here. It's an organic seed starting mix, and they're all thriving. And what I like about this technique, it'll go to fruit much quicker than if I started it from seeds. You can see the roots are starting to come out of the bottom. I've got this 9 and another dozen that's going to a friend. He actually is a hemp farmer, growing organic hemp, much like a market garden. So those will be a gift to him. All right, so let's start taking a look at what's growing on inside my home market garden. All right, if you remember the last video, it was on the Florida weave, right here. I'm on my fourth run. You can see clearly I need a fifth. I'll do that after I'm done with this video. It's just every day gets by me and I want to do an update. Before I show you the garden, let's just talk about some things that have happened here. I have a wobbler irrigation system in addition to the drip tape, and I also hand water. I had been using the overhead wobbler system and I noticed I started to get a little bit of a fungus growing. So I've stopped with the overhead watering in the process of pruning up these lower leaves, and I'm trying to keep this as dry as possible, the leaves that is. It's going to be a challenge because we're starting to get into our rainy season here in Florida. So there's nothing I can do about that, but I can stop the overhead irrigation. So, that would be a tip right there. You want to be mindful of the health of your plant and the leaves. And if you start to see something developing, you need to stop and investigate and figure out, is there a quick fix? That's part of what I like being out here once a week. You all know I'm using my wire hoe. You can see I'm almost virtually weed free here. So again, I told you that I would be honest about successes, failures, and what's happening along this process. So again, that was the first problem I had noticed with my tomato plants. You could see the height and how they're thriving. They're doing amazing. I just applied another application of the organic fertilizer. So I'm going to start doing that every week now because we are getting into where the plants are setting fruit. So I did just want to talk about the technique I'm using to water these at this point. Drip tape irrigation. I have it running twice a day. I'll see how that goes, right? If it looks like they're getting too much water, I can stop it altogether for a day or two, or I can go to once a day. But it's hot and dry here right now in sunny Florida, zone 9B. Anyway, if this is in the camera angle, you could see the marigolds, and I'll grab the camera and we'll do a little bit of a tour here, but these marigolds that I started from seeds are just thriving. It looks beautiful. There's lots of butterflies. The other day I saw a bumblebee that was like that big, really thick. He was in the zucchini. It was totally covered in yellow from the pollen. All right, let me grab the camera and we'll start doing a little bit of a close-up here. We'll walk the garden. Let's talk about these beautiful marigolds. Now, this group of marigolds here, basically either it self-seeded or it was a result of me broadcasting the seeds. About a year ago, I read a book by, I believe the author is Bree Author, and she talks about foodscaping and broadcasting seeds and letting nature take its course. So that one I did not deliberately start from a seed. I just broadcasted it, or it's just from a seed that fell to the ground. Now, let's take a look at the fennel. So the fennel is still thriving. Every week we're taking several bulbs of the fennel. There's more. Now we're getting into the Brandywine heirloom tomatoes. All right, again, as I say, they've been thriving. I have my zucchini back there. We'll see how that grows. And there's the marigolds and zinnia. Part of the reason to grow those is so I can cut those and put them in a vase for Stacy during the week. Let's see here. I did see some tomatoes growing here. All right, here's one right here. Where is it? Let me get this to focus. There we go. So, beautiful Brandywine heirloom tomato. Again, I'm just going to pan down here and let you all take a look at how beautiful the marigolds look and how my tomato plants are thriving. All right, and again, the market garden techniques that I'm utilizing, I'm just amazed at the vigor and the growth of these tomato plants. And I just wanted to give you all a close-up of when I talk about the vigor, right? I mean, these are just thriving. All right, lots of flowers. Again, I talked about removing suckers, so I got to keep up with them. And we'll look down here, and you can see how much growth we've had in about a month. I did just want to take a minute, even though this is not considered my market garden, this is my food forest. Right behind it I have some beautiful blackberries. So let's talk about tree mulch, right? When tree mulch fully breaks down, it's basically the compost that I'm using in my home market garden. Where these tomato plants are, I did apply some organic fertilizer. So below that tree mulch, there is some beautiful composted soil because this is about 2 years of tree mulch breaking down. So I just wanted to show you guys, much like a Jim Kowaleski method where he's using more of a mulch that's not quite compost, but it's probably half to 3/4 of the way there. Still getting some great results. And while we're at the food forest, we might as well take a minute to talk about longevity spinach. This actually, it was in about a 1-gallon pot, and boy, it can take over and act like a ground cover. So it's a great sustainable crop. It's very nutritious, and pretty much how we like it is to pull some of the more tender leaves, the new growth, off and put them in a salad. So that's a nice crop right there that kind of thrives on neglect, as my friend Pete over at Green Dreams TV would say. Okay, back over to the home market garden. I just wanted to give you all another view of my marigolds and zinnias, how beautiful they are. And again, it's for aesthetics as well as bringing around those pollinators and maybe keeping away some of those bad bugs. And I do want to give a close-up here to what I'm talking about, what is happening to my leaves when I was overhead watering. So again, you need to keep an eye on your plants, look for signs of it telling you something's not right, and try and do some corrective measures to stop that from happening. And that's just a look back the other way. You can see everything's thriving and looks really pretty. I had to stop by this rosemary bush. This was a propagated rosemary plant from a single sprig. That's about a year old now, and it's thriving in that pot. It's just, again, I'm fascinated with the propagation method and how you can just keep getting plant after plant. All right, every time I think I'm done with the collard greens, I just harvested 2 big bags for my next door neighbor who I actually grew these for. We're getting a little bit of bug damage, but these are coming out. There's my flowers that were started from seeds. And I have some thyme here. It's another plant. Look at those vibrant colors. Now this is another tomato plant that was propagated from a sucker. So we're at the first of the 2 20-foot home market garden beds, and this is my kale. It's just way too much for us to eat. Again, we're growing organic, so you're going to get some stuff like that. These get harvested, and if I don't cut the end off and use the rest, they'll go to my son's chickens. So kale is thriving. There's what's left of my escarole. Probably should have been harvested quite some time ago, but we'll get rid of the bad leaves and eat what's left. Here's a look at my Italian sweet peppers. So I saw a recipe online where they were roasted with some olive oil. They stuffed them with an anchovy, maybe a little garlic, onion. So these are supposed to turn to different colors, but you know, that could take another 4 weeks. But again, that plant is thriving. It's due for another Florida weave up here, and you can see we're getting new growth, so the growth continues. Let's take a look at my fig trees. Although they're not planted in the home market garden, because it's something that I propagated, I thought we'd take a minute just to talk about. These are from cuttings that I propagated from a fig tree at my mother's house, and I've got figs all over these. Now, they grew over the winter inside my greenhouse. They all were cuttings much like this right here. And again, root hormone, and I just kept potting them up. We have our mulberries over here. There's no fruit on them just yet, but they were loaded up just a few weeks ago. We'll take a quick minute to talk about my home market garden in the Birdie's raised garden bed. I have garlic here. Last year, September-ish, I went with the second planting of sweet potatoes. So you can see we've got more coming up. So once the garlic comes out, I'm going to amend the soil, and then we'll replant some sweet potatoes in there. But I just wanted to touch on the garlic and how I have sweet potatoes. I did tuck some lettuce in between the tomato plants here, and they're doing really well. Sorry for that turn with the camera, but right across from it is thyme, one of my favorite herbs. Has such a lemony aroma to it. Great to use fresh when you're cooking. And here's a rosemary plant that I propagated. I put it in the ground. I have another one right back here. And these usually end up being gifts for friends and family. Here's another one right here. And I'll give you a look down the two 40-foot beds, and you can see how high everything is. All right, now, as promised, if you stick around to the end, I'm going to talk about my solar animal repeller. All right, so the story behind my purchasing a solar animal repeller. I had an animal coming into my home market garden, and it was literally digging up my tomato plants to where the roots were totally exposed, the plants were knocked over. We do have a small rabbit, never really does much damage, but this raccoon, and the reason I know it was a raccoon, I have a trail camera, and I witnessed it 3 nights in a row, and at that point it was, do I live trap it or do I try and deter it? Now, I've had this about a week, and I can tell you right now that I have had no activity. Now, I do have squirrels that come in the garden during the day. They typically bury stuff more than dig up. I do not keep it on during the day. Now, I'll turn it on. It's annoying, but at night it's going to flash, and then you have the volume here, and I'll leave it up all the way. You can listen. I don't leave it this loud. I typically keep it about there. Anyway, to my surprise, this has worked perfectly. So again, it's a solar powered. You can see right up here is where it charges. You can hook it up to a USB cable and charge it, which is what they recommend when you first get it. It's extremely lightweight. It feels like it's not well made, but so far for a week, it's doing the job. So I'm not going to judge based on the weight of it. You know, I thought the batteries might add a little more weight, but if it's working, I'm not going to say anything negative about it. There's many brands and versions of this. I just wanted to show you what I used in my home market garden to remedy my raccoon problem. Okay, there you go, as promised, my update on my home market garden. And if you haven't started propagating, you should try it. I find it pretty cool, and nothing better than having free plants. Again, these are going to be gifts, and if I have extra, they'll go in Gerald's food forest. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about putting the marigolds and zinnias in front of my tomato plants. How do you think it looks? What do you think of my tomato growth? You guys got any comments? You think this market garden technique is something that you'd like to try? You think I'm getting good results? I'd like to see what you guys think. I think it looks fantastic. All right. I want to thank you for watching the video, and if you stuck around, hopefully my review of the solar animal repeller was helpful. If it was, please give us a thumbs up. I'd encourage everyone to subscribe. We're getting tremendous growth here, as you've just seen. These techniques are very applicable to a home gardener. And that brings me to the question of why I refer to my garden as a home market garden. Debate's been you don't sell anything, so you're not a market garden. I wanted to emphasize market garden in what I'm calling this because I'm utilizing the same techniques and tools as the farmers are using for their market garden. So it's to illustrate that you can scale down those techniques and get the same exact results of farmers who are making a fantastic living growing organic fruits and vegetables, specifically vegetables. So I hope that answers that question, and we'll see you on the next video.